Hello, everybody. Dr. F. Scott Feil here, and I'd like to introduce you to our newest sponsor. The NPTE Final Frontier is the review course that I wish was around when I took the board exam. For those of you who know my story, it took me a handful of times to pass that exam, and quite frankly, I really wish I had an exam review course around, just like the NPTE Final Frontier. Check out their website, npteff.com, and use the code HET at checkout for 10% off to all of our listeners and fans. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Teach Me Something Tuesday. I'm your host, Dr. F. Scott Feil, and this is the Healthcare Education Transformation Podcast. Today's Teach Me Something Tuesday is maybe a little bit risque. It's something that I may take a little bit of flack for, but truth be told, it's how I feel. It's how I've always felt, even when I was back in undergrad. And that is grades don't really matter. Now, let's take this phrase, this sentence, this sentiment, and pick it apart a little bit and really get down to the nuts and bolts of what I'm talking about here. And grades really first started back in the late 1700s. I think it was like 1780 or something like that, where Yale had kind of created a scale. I think they had four descriptive adjectives, which were like optimi, second optimi, inferiors, and pejores, or whatever it was, right? Over the next century or so, Yale then refined its grading system to a point system where it went from 0 to 4, where 2 was a passing mark. Anything above that was considered better. But the grades in general were kept secret from the students so that there wasn't any competition or anything like that. Well, fast forward to about the 1800s or so, Harvard steps in and starts grading on a 20-point scale. And eventually some of the math and philosophy folks at Harvard applied the range of 100 points. And by the end of the Civil War, really, there was, grades were a normal part of education, but it was a more holistic approach, right? We looked at behavior, we looked at, their performance and their abilities. It was more of like how we would take a wellness approach to an individual in healthcare. It wasn't until the 1940s that A through F scale became the standard, and that was really rooted in that 100-point scale, right? To where, 90 to 100 was an A, 80 to 89 was a B, and so on and so on, right? So it's relatively new that this A through F system, even existed. And with that being said, we don't have E, right? Because professors felt that they didn't want parents of the students to get E confused with excellent and think, oh, they did really well, when in reality, they didn't do very well at all. And so F was implemented for failure. If we really take a look at this and we figure out why grades have become such a big topic and a hot topic, I think it sets an unfair standard to what we're really trying to accomplish. I think that grades don't always correlate, especially in the medical field, with how good of a clinician you're going to be. And I think, part of the reason I feel this way is that I was that student. I was a straight B student with a couple of C's sprinkled in there. I was always a very good student. I worked very hard to learn. However, it's what I thought was learning, and a lot of it was rote memorization. And so that got me through high school, a straight A student, 4.0. I had a bunch of credits for AP classes, which was nice when I got to college. I think I graduated I think I was number 10 in my class out of 200. So that was pretty decent. But once I got to college, I realized that, this rote memorization stuff really just is not working for me. And that's, like I said, when I started my string of B's and C's in there, that was just one of those learning curves for me, or pun intended, not learning curves, because it took me until I got into an EDD program to figure out that rote memorization was not the answer. And I really became okay with getting, B's and the occasional C if I worked really hard and just couldn't get it, because it helped me realize that I need to figure out better ways to learn this stuff in a systematic approach that takes a bigger viewpoint of what I'm trying to learn and really trying to master the content and understand it better. If you understand the content and you get a B in the class, great. I'm thrilled for you. If you understand the content really, really well, but you just couldn't apply it, especially from a technical standpoint, and you end up with a C, that happens, occasionally. Don't let it happen too often, right? Or else your GPA slips and then there are repercussions for that. However, to me, an A and a B are both really good grades. I want to know at the end of my class, at the end of, a section or a term or a lab or whatever it may be, did you walk away learning something? Is there something that you can hold on to and say, "Hey, I understand this. I could now turn around and go and teach this to somebody else because I grasp it that well." And if not, then that's the stuff you need to lean into and really refresh yourself with, because that's what's going to be important moving forward, right? Your weaknesses or the areas that you lack, that's where you can really make, a lot of benefit and a lot of headway, is if you go back and review that stuff and try to learn that stuff better. So, recognize that grades are one thing, they exist. You can't have them drop too low for sure. But I also don't think it's worthy of being obsessed with grades. If you have to get that A and then have to get that 4.0, like, more power to you. I'm not that guy. I've never been that guy. I would much rather you just learn the content and be able to apply it to different real world scenarios and real world settings. So take that for what it's worth. Recognize, to some people, grades mean everything. To others, they may not mean as much. I'm of the camp that, again, I just don't find them to be too important because they don't directly correlate to how you're going to perform as a clinician in the real world. And again, I am living proof of that. Straight B student with a couple C's sprinkled in, and I had a very successful clinical career for over 16 years now and running. So don't sweat the grades too much. And for professors, I would say, maybe don't lean into them too much. Don't put too much emphasis on them. Recognize that they exist and that they are important. They give us some sort of standard to go by and to, see if what we are truly teaching is being properly assessed. But then it's on us to show that what we're teaching is being properly assessed through our course objectives, our learning objectives, and our assessments. Because if we write crummy tests and crummy questions, it doesn't really show what it is we're trying to teach, right? And so then it becomes a matter of looking inward and trying to figure out, how do I show that what I'm teaching is being accurately assessed? So that's the conundrum with the grades. I still don't find too many ways to work around them because they are what they are. They've become, part of academia and the institution. But recognize that learning the content and really trying to master it should be the main objective. Hope that was helpful, and I hope that sets some of your mind at ease as you move forward. I will say that the takeaway for me is I have never had an employer ask me what my GPA was. Something to take away for the real world. Hope that was helpful, and we'll see you on the next one.